I want to tell you something that took me decades to really understand. There are two voices inside you right now, in this very moment. One is screaming for attention, terrified of being ignored, desperate to prove something. The other is whispering gently, patiently waiting for you to remember who you really are. Most of us spend our entire lives listening to the wrong voice. We follow the ego around like it's our master, and we wonder why we're exhausted, why we're never satisfied, why peace feels like something other people have but we can't quite reach. I spent years of my life chasing what my ego wanted: success, recognition, being the smartest person in the room. And let me tell you, I got some of those things. I really did. But you know what happened? The moment I got them, the ego just moved the goalpost. It said, okay, that was nice, but now you need more. Now you need something else. It was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The soul, though, the soul doesn't work like that. The soul doesn't need anything from the outside world to feel complete. It already knows it's complete. It's been complete this whole time. The soul is that quiet knowing inside you that everything is actually okay, even when your mind is telling you that everything is falling apart. The soul is the part of you that can watch your thoughts without being destroyed by them. What I want to share with you today is how to tell these two voices apart, because once you can do that, once you can really hear the difference, your whole life starts to shift. You stop being a puppet on strings. You stop reacting to every little thing. You start to live from a deeper place, a truer place. And that, my friend, that's freedom. Let me start by telling you about a time when I really saw this conflict clearly in my own life. I was at a gathering once, a spiritual retreat kind of thing, and there was this moment where someone else was speaking, sharing something really beautiful and profound. And I noticed something happening inside me. My ego was getting uncomfortable. It was saying, hey, wait a minute, you should be the one saying that. You should be the wise one here. Why is everyone listening to them and not paying attention to you? And right there, right in that moment, another part of me was watching that whole drama. Another part of me could see the ego doing its thing, could see it getting all puffed up and threatened, and that part was just kind of amused by it. That was my soul, just watching, not judging, just noticing. Oh, look at the ego doing its dance again. Isn't that interesting? That's when I really got it. The ego isn't bad. It's not evil. It's just scared. It thinks it needs to fight for survival every single moment. It thinks that if you're not special, if you're not better than someone else, if you're not achieving and proving and defending, then you'll somehow disappear. The ego believes that you are what you accomplish, what you own, what people think of you. It's built on a foundation of separation and fear. The soul knows something completely different. The soul knows that you are not separate from anything. The soul knows that beneath all the stories and identities and achievements, there's just this presence, this awareness, this being that was here before, you had a name and will be here after. All your accomplishments are forgotten. The soul rests in connection, in unity, in love. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people think the spiritual path is about killing the ego, destroying it, getting rid of it completely. But that's just the ego trying to be spiritual. That's the ego saying, I'm going to be the best at having no ego. See how humble I am? See how enlightened I am? It's still the same game, just wearing different clothes. What actually happens, what I've experienced in my own journey, is that you start to develop a different relationship with the ego. You stop identifying with it so completely. You start to see it as a part of you, a useful part sometimes, but not the whole story. It's like having a guard dog. The guard dog is useful when there's actual danger, but you don't let the guard dog run your entire life. You don't let it bite every person who comes to your door. The ego serves a function. It helps you navigate the world, make decisions, protect yourself when you really need protection. But when the ego is in charge of everything, when it's running the whole show, life becomes exhausting. You're constantly defending, constantly comparing, constantly trying to be someone other than who you are. You're at war with reality itself. Let me tell you how the ego speaks. The ego says things like, I need to win this argument or I'll look stupid. The ego says, I can't be happy until I get that thing I want. The ego says, I'm better than them or I'm worse than them. The ego is always measuring, always comparing, always living in the past or the future, never right here in this moment. The ego creates a story about who you are, and then it spends all its energy defending that story. If you think of yourself as a smart person, then the ego gets threatened anytime you don't understand something. If you think of yourself as a good person, then the ego gets defensive when someone suggests you made a mistake. The ego is attached to the image, not the truth. And here's the sneaky thing about the ego. It can sound really reasonable. It can sound like it's helping you. It'll say things like, you need to be realistic here. You need to protect yourself. You can't trust people. Life is hard and you've got to fight for what's yours. And some of that might even be true on one level. But the ego takes it too far. The ego turns everything into a battlefield. The soul speaks in a completely different voice. The soul whispers. It doesn't shout. The soul says things like, you're okay right now. You're enough, exactly as you are. This moment is complete in itself. The soul isn't worried about the future or regretful about the past. The soul is here, present, aware. The soul says, look at this. Just look. Isn't this moment extraordinary when you really pay attention? When you're living from your soul, there's a quality of ease. Not that everything is perfect or easy on the outside, but there's an inner ease. You're not fighting with what is. You're not resisting reality. You're flowing with life instead of constantly pushing against it. You trust something deeper than your own plans and fears. I remember this one time I was stuck in traffic, really stuck, and I had somewhere important to be. My ego was going crazy. It was furious. It was thinking, this is terrible. This is ruining everything. Why does this always happen to me? These other drivers are idiots. Just a whole storm of suffering. And none of it was changing the traffic. I was still sitting there, but now I was miserable too. Then something shifted. I don't know if I can even tell you how it happened, but I just stopped fighting it. I stopped resisting what was happening. I took a breath and looked around and thought, okay, this is what's happening right now. I'm in traffic. That's the reality. And in that moment, the suffering stopped. The traffic was still there. I was still going to be late, but the war was over. That's the soul. The soul can be with what is. The ego is always arguing with reality, saying it should be different, it has to be different, I can't accept this. And that argument is where all the suffering comes from. Not from the circumstances themselves, but from the resistance to the circumstances. Now let me tell you about the different disguises the ego wears, because it's really clever. The ego is like a master of disguise. It can dress up as almost anything. One of its favorite costumes is righteousness. Oh, the ego loves to be right. It loves to be morally superior. It'll take a genuine value or belief you have and turn it into a weapon. Suddenly you're not just living your values, you're judging everyone who doesn't live exactly the way you do. I see this all the time in spiritual communities, which is kind of ironic. People get really attached to being spiritual. Their ego takes over the whole thing. They start judging people who aren't spiritual enough, who aren't meditating enough, who aren't eating the right foods or reading the right books. They've just traded one set of ego stories for another set of ego stories. The ego also loves to play victim. It loves to tell the story of how you've been wronged, how life isn't fair, how other people are the problem. Now, real harm happens in life, real injustice happens. I'm not saying everything is fine and we should just accept abuse or oppression, but the ego takes our real experiences of pain and turns them into an identity. It says, I am the person this happened to. My story of suffering is who I am. When you're living from your soul, you can acknowledge pain without becoming it. You can say, yes, this difficult thing happened, and also, I am more than this story. I am the awareness that experienced this thing, not just the experience itself. The soul has space for pain without being consumed by it. Another disguise the ego wears is the helper, the savior. This one can be really tricky because it looks so good on the surface. The ego says, I need to fix everyone. I need to save people. I need to make everyone see the truth I see. And again, genuine compassion and service are beautiful things. But when the ego is driving, you're not really serving others. You're serving your own need to feel important, to feel needed, to feel superior. I had to look at this in myself. I had to see all the ways I was helping people because it made me feel good about myself, because it reinforced my identity as a wise person or a spiritual person. And when I really saw that, it was humbling. It was uncomfortable, but it was also freeing because I could start to serve from a cleaner place without all that need mixed into it. The ego also shows up as the controller. It wants to control everything. It wants to plan every detail, predict every outcome, make sure nothing unexpected happens. It thinks that if you can just control enough variables, you'll finally be safe. But life isn't controllable. Life is wild and unpredictable and constantly changing. And when you're trying to control everything, you're just exhausting yourself and missing what's actually happening. The soul doesn't need to control. The soul trusts. The soul says, I'll respond to whatever comes. I don't need to know the whole future right now. I can be present with this moment and trust that I'll be present with the next moment when it arrives. That doesn't mean being passive or not making plans. It means holding your plans lightly, being willing to adapt, to flow, to let life surprise you. Here's something really important. The ego is always living in scarcity. It believes there's not enough love, not enough success, not enough time, not enough of whatever it thinks you need. So it's constantly grasping, constantly trying to get more, to hold on to what it has, to make sure you get yours before someone else takes it. The soul lives in abundance. The soul knows that the present moment is full, it's complete. There's nothing missing right now. Even when you're hungry, even when you're struggling, there's still this moment, still this breath, still this awareness. The soul can see the richness that's always here when we're not lost in the ego's story of lack. I want to tell you about the body too, because this is where the conflict between ego and soul really plays out. Your body carries the wisdom of your soul. Your body is always here, always in the present moment. Your body doesn't live in the past or future. It's only ever right here, right now. But the ego treats the body like an object, like a thing to be controlled or judged or compared to other bodies. When you're present in your body, really feeling your breath, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling the sensations that are happening right now, you're connecting with your soul. You're dropping out of the story and into the direct experience of being alive. This is why practices like meditation and yoga and mindful walking are so powerful. They bring you back into your body, back into presence, back into soul awareness. The ego is terrified of being present in the body because the body tells the truth. The body will tell you when you're scared, when you're sad, when you need to rest, when something doesn't feel right. The ego wants to override all of that with its agenda, its plans, its need to keep pushing forward no matter what. But the body knows. The soul knows through the body. Let me tell you about relationships, because this is where the ego versus soul conflict becomes really obvious. The ego approaches relationships from need. It needs the other person to make it feel complete, to validate it, to prove its worth. The ego says, I need you to love me so I can feel lovable. I need you to approve of me so I can feel okay about myself. It's constantly trying to get something from the other person. And when you're coming from ego in relationship, You can't really see the other person. You're just seeing your projection, your needs, your fears. You're seeing what you want them to be or what you're afraid they might be. You're not meeting them as they actually are. And they can feel that. Everyone can feel when they're not really being seen, when they're just being used to fulfill someone else's ego needs. The soul approaches relationship from fullness. The soul says, I am complete. And from this completeness, I can truly meet you. I can see you as you are. I can love you not because I need something from you, but because love is what I am. The soul doesn't need the relationship to be a certain way to feel okay. The soul can be with what is, with the real human being in front of it, with all their imperfections and struggles and beauty. This doesn't mean you don't have preferences or boundaries. This doesn't mean you stay in relationships that are harmful, but the quality is different. You're not grasping. You're not trying to make someone be who they're not. You're free, and you're allowing the other person to be free. And ironically, that's when real intimacy becomes possible. When two people can meet from soul to soul, from presence to presence, without all the ego drama in the way. So how do you actually work with this? How do you shift from ego to soul in your daily life? The first practice is simply noticing. Just start to notice which voice is speaking. When you hear a thought, when you feel an impulse, just gently ask, is this ego or soul? Is this fear or love? Is this contraction or expansion? You don't have to judge it. You don't have to make the ego bad. Just notice. Oh, that's my ego feeling threatened right now. Oh, that's my ego comparing myself to someone else. The simple act of noticing creates space. It creates a little gap between the thought and your identification with the thought. And in that gap, freedom lives. Start to notice what the ego feels like in your body. For most people, the ego creates tension. It creates tightness in the chest or the jaw or the belly. It speeds up your breathing. It creates a sense of urgency or anxiety or agitation. The soul feels different. The soul feels spacious, open, relaxed. There's often a sense of softening when you drop from ego into soul. So you can use your body as a guide. When you notice that tension, that tightness, that urgency, you can pause. You can take a breath. You can say, okay, my ego is activated right now. What is it afraid of? What is it trying to protect? You don't have to fight it. Just be curious about it. Just shine some awareness on it. Another practice is to catch yourself in the act of defending. The ego is always defending its position, its story, its identity. So when you notice yourself getting defensive, when someone challenges you or questions you or disagrees with you and you feel that need to prove you're right, just pause, take a breath, ask yourself, what am I actually defending here? Is it the truth, or is it just my ego's need to be right? Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply admit you don't know, or admit you might be wrong, or admit you made a mistake. The ego hates this. The ego thinks that admitting any of these things is a kind of death, but actually, it's incredibly freeing. When you can say, I don't know, or I was wrong, you're no longer carrying the exhausting burden of having to be perfect all the time. Practice being with silence. Just sit quietly for a few minutes every day. Don't do anything. Don't try to fix anything or figure anything out. Just be. The ego hates silence because in silence, it starts to dissolve. There's nothing for it to grab onto, nothing to fight against. But the soul loves silence. The soul is silence. In silence, you can hear that deeper voice that's been there all along. When you're making decisions, try this. Notice where the impulse to decide is coming from. Is it coming from fear or love? Is it coming from scarcity or abundance? Is it coming from the need to prove something or control something? Or is it coming from a deeper knowing? The ego makes decisions to avoid discomfort or to get something it thinks it needs. The soul makes decisions from alignment, from truth, from what feels right at the deepest level. Start to see other people's egos without judgment. When someone is being difficult or defensive or aggressive, see if you can recognize their ego doing its thing. They're scared, they're protecting something, they're caught in their story. When you can see that with compassion instead of taking it personally, everything changes. You're not fighting ego with ego anymore. You're meeting their fear with your presence. Practice gratitude, but not as a technique or a should. Real gratitude, where you actually stop and feel appreciation for what's here right now. This moment, this breath, the fact that you're alive. Gratitude is a direct expression of soul. The ego can't feel genuine gratitude because it's too busy focusing on what's missing. But the soul naturally appreciates. The soul sees the gift of existence itself. Work with your edges. Notice where you get rigid, where you get attached, where you can't let go. Those edges are where your ego is holding on tight. You don't have to force anything. Just bring gentle awareness to those places. Ask yourself, what would it be like to soften here? What would it be like to let go just a little bit? Sometimes the ego will relax its grip when you approach it with kindness instead of force. Serve others without needing recognition. Do something kind without telling anyone about it. Help someone without expecting anything in return. This is really hard for the ego. The ego wants credit. It wants to be seen and appreciated. But when you serve from soul, the service itself is the reward. The connection is the reward. You're not doing it to build up your identity as a good person. You're doing it because love is flowing through you. Practice forgiveness, starting with yourself. The ego loves to hold grudges, including grudges against yourself. It loves to replay your mistakes and failures and use them as evidence that you're not enough. But the soul knows that you're doing the best you can with the awareness you have. The soul can look at your mistakes with compassion and wisdom instead of judgment. When you forgive yourself, you create space to forgive others. Not because what they did was okay, but because holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Forgiveness is for you. It's how you free yourself from the prison of the past. It's how you come back to the present moment where life is actually happening. Spend time in nature. Nature doesn't have an ego. A tree doesn't worry about whether it's as tall as the other trees. A river doesn't compare itself to other rivers. Nature just is. It flows, it grows, it changes, it dies and is born again. When you're in nature, really present with it, you can feel your own natural being. You can remember that you're part of this flow, this cycle, this dance of life. Question your stories. The ego is made of stories. I'm the kind of person who always gets hurt. I'm not good at relationships. I'll never be successful. Life is hard. People can't be trusted. Just notice these stories. Write them down. Look at them. Are they absolutely true? Or are they just thoughts you've been thinking for so long that they feel true? The soul doesn't live in stories. The soul lives in direct experience. What's actually happening right now without the story? What's actually true in this moment? Usually you'll find that this moment is much simpler and more manageable than the story about it. The story is where all the suffering lives. Practice what I call witness consciousness. This is where you step back and watch your experience instead of being completely identified with it. You notice your thoughts without being your thoughts. You feel your emotions without being your emotions. You observe your ego doing its thing without being swept away by it. This is the soul's perspective. The soul is the witness, the awareness that's aware of everything else. You can practice this anytime, right now even. Notice that you're reading these words. Notice that there's an awareness that's aware of reading. That awareness is you, not the thoughts about what you're reading, not the judgments or reactions, but the awareness itself. That's your true nature. That's the soul. And it's always here, always available, always free. Let me tell you where this path leads. Not to perfection. The ego wants perfection, wants to finally arrive at some state where everything is figured out and you never struggle again. But that's not how it works. You'll still have challenges. You'll still have moments when your ego takes over. You'll still make mistakes and get lost in the story. But something fundamental shifts. You develop what I call a meta-awareness. You can be lost in the ego's drama and simultaneously aware that you're lost in the ego's drama. And that awareness itself starts to dissolve the drama. You might be in the middle of an argument and suddenly you'll catch yourself and think, oh, look at me, my ego is so activated right now. And you might even laugh. Not a mean laugh, but a compassionate laugh at the human comedy of it all. You become less serious. The ego is so serious. It thinks everything is a matter of life and death. But the soul has a quality of lightness, of playfulness. The soul can hold your human experience tenderly without being destroyed by it. The soul knows that you're okay at a level that's deeper than any circumstance. Your relationships transform when you're not constantly needing things from other people, when you're not defending or attacking or trying to control. People can actually relax around you. They can be themselves. And you'll find that your presence becomes a gift to others. Just by being present, by being centered in soul instead of lost in ego, you create space for other people to find their own presence. You stop taking everything so personally. You realize that what other people do is about them, not about you. Their anger, their judgment, their behavior is coming from their own ego, their own fear, their own story. You don't have to defend against it or absorb it. You can let it be what it is and stay centered in yourself. You become more creative. The ego is actually not very creative because it's always repeating the same patterns, always staying in its comfort zone, always protecting its identity. But the soul is infinitely creative. The soul can flow with life, can respond freshly to each moment, can see possibilities that the ego's narrow vision misses. You experience more joy. Not because your circumstances are perfect, but because you're not resisting your circumstances anymore. Joy isn't something you achieve or earn. Joy is your natural state when you're not lost in the ego's suffering. It's like the sun that's always shining behind the clouds. The clouds don't have to disappear completely. You just have to remember that the sun is there. You become a healing presence in the world, not because you're trying to be, not because it's part of your identity, but because consciousness itself is healing. When you're present, when you're centered in soul, you affect everyone around you. You remind them, without saying a word, that there's another way to be. You show them that it's possible to be at peace even in this chaotic world. Your life becomes simpler. The ego complicates everything with its drama and its needs and its stories. But the soul is simple. The soul says, be here, be kind, be true, pay attention, love. That's it. Not easy always, but simple. And there's a profound relief in that simplicity. You stop waiting for your life to start. The ego is always saying, I'll be happy when I get that thing, when I achieve that goal, when circumstances are different. It's always postponing life. But the soul knows that life is happening right now. This moment is it. This is your life right here, right now. Not in some imagined future when everything is perfect. Now. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop waiting for life to start, when you're fully present with this moment, life actually gets better. Not because you're trying to make it better, but because you're finally available to receive the goodness that's already here. You notice the small miracles, the way the light falls through the window, the smile on a stranger's face, the taste of your food, the aliveness in your body. You develop trust, not blind trust, but a deep trust in the process of life itself. You've seen enough times that you can handle what comes. You've seen that difficulties pass. You've seen that you're more resilient than you thought. You've seen that there's a wisdom in life that's bigger than your ego's plans. So you can relax a little. You can let go a little. You can trust. You become comfortable with not knowing. The ego needs to know. It needs certainty. It needs to have everything figured out. But the soul is comfortable with mystery. The soul knows that you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to have all the answers. You can live the questions. You can be in the mystery. And there's actually a kind of excitement in that, a sense of adventure. You stop abandoning yourself. This is a big one. Most of us have learned to abandon ourselves for others, to override our own needs and feelings, to please other people or to fit in or to avoid conflict. But when you're connected to your soul, you can't do that anymore. You honor your truth. You honor your needs, not in a selfish way, but in a way that respects your own being. And paradoxically, when you stop abandoning yourself, you're actually more available to others because you're not coming from depletion and resentment, you're coming from fullness. You can give from overflow instead of trying to give from an empty cup. You can set boundaries without guilt because you understand that boundaries are an act of love for yourself and for others. You make peace with death. I know that sounds heavy, but stay with me. The ego is terrified of death because the ego is all about survival, about continuing, about maintaining the separate self. But the soul isn't afraid of death because the soul knows it isn't born and doesn't die. The soul is awareness itself, and awareness doesn't die when the body dies. When you connect with your soul, you touch something eternal, something that was never born and will never die. This doesn't mean you're reckless with your life. It doesn't mean you don't take care of yourself. But there's a freedom that comes from making peace with your mortality. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You become more willing to take risks, to be vulnerable, to really live instead of just existing. Because you realize that this life is precious and temporary, and you might as well show up fully while you're here. You experience moments of unity. There will be times when the separation between you and everything else completely dissolves. You'll be walking down the street and suddenly you're not separate from the trees or the sky or the people passing by. You're all part of one thing, one flowing river of consciousness. These moments might last a second or an hour, but they change you. They show you what's true underneath all the separation. And you'll carry that knowing with you. Even when you're back in the ordinary consciousness of separation, even when your ego is doing its thing, somewhere in you, you'll remember. You'll remember that we're all connected, that there's no other, that the same awareness looking out through your eyes is looking out through everyone's eyes. And that changes how you move through the world. You become more compassionate when you see your own ego clearly. When you see all the ways you're scared and defended and trying to prove something, you can't help but have compassion for others doing the same thing. You see that we're all just trying to feel safe, trying to feel loved, trying to matter. We're all just souls having a human experience, playing out this drama of separation until we remember who we really are. You stop trying to change people. You realize that everyone is on their own path, having their own experiences, learning their own lessons. You can offer your presence, your love, your wisdom if they're open to it, but you can't force anyone to wake up. You can't make anyone see what they're not ready to see, and that's okay. That's their journey. Your journey is to stay centered in your own truth and let others have theirs. Your life becomes an offering, not in some grandiose way, but in the simple ways you show up each day, the way you treat the cashier at the grocery store, the way you drive your car, the way you do your work, whatever that work is. It all becomes an offering when you're coming from soul instead of ego. You're not trying to get anywhere or prove anything. You're just being here, being present, being love in whatever form is needed in this moment. And that's really what this is all about. This whole journey from ego to soul, this whole practice of waking up, it's about learning to be love. Not the romantic idea of love, not the needy, grasping kind of love, but the love that's just your natural state when you're not defended, when you're not afraid, when you're not trying to be something you're not. That love is what you are, not what you have or what you do or what you achieve, what you are. Right now, already, always. The ego doesn't believe this. The ego thinks you have to earn love, deserve love, work for love. But the soul knows. The soul knows you are love, expressing itself through this particular body, this particular life, this particular moment in time. So I want to leave you with this. Right now, just for a moment, can you feel the awareness that's here? The awareness that's reading these words, that's thinking about them, that's having whatever reaction you're having. That awareness isn't thinking. It's not doing anything. It's just here, just present, just aware. That's your soul. That's the truth of what you are. And from that awareness, can you feel a sense of okayness? Just a simple sense that in this moment, right now, you're okay. Not that everything in your life is perfect, not that you don't have challenges or pain or things you wish were different, but right now, in this moment, you're here, you're breathing, you're alive, you're aware, and that's enough. You're enough. That's the voice of your soul. And it's available to you always, in every moment, no matter what's happening. The ego will keep chattering, keep creating drama, keep trying to pull you into its stories. That's what it does. But you don't have to believe it anymore. You can hear it and come back to this. Come back to presence, come back to awareness, come back to love. This is the practice. Not once and done, but moment by moment, breath by breath. Catching yourself when you're lost in ego and gently, kindly, without judgment, coming back home, coming back to your soul, coming back to what's true. And little by little, it gets easier. Little by little, the soul becomes your primary residence instead of just a place you visit once in a while. This is my invitation to you, not to be perfect, not to never have an ego again, but to simply start paying attention. Start noticing which voice is speaking. Start choosing, when you can, to listen to the deeper voice. Start trusting that quiet knowing inside you that says, you're okay, you're enough, you're exactly where you need to be. Your life will transform. Not all at once, probably. Not in some dramatic flash, but slowly, steadily, like the way spring comes. One day you'll realize you're not suffering the way you used to. You're not fighting with life the way you used to. You're more at peace, more at home in yourself, more available to life and love and joy. And you'll know that this journey, this practice of moving from ego to soul, was the most important thing you ever did. So start now. Start today. Start this moment. Take a breath. Feel yourself here. Notice the awareness that's aware. And from that place, from that presence, from that soul space, step into your life. Not to change it or fix it or make it be something it's not, but to fully live it. To fully be here for it. To finally stop waiting and just be alive. Right here, right now, in this beautiful, messy, precious human experience we're all sharing. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here, for listening, for being willing to look at this stuff. It's not always comfortable to see your ego clearly. It takes courage, but you're here, you're doing the work, and that matters. You matter, not because of what you do or what you achieve, but because you are. Because consciousness is looking through your eyes, living through your life, and that itself is extraordinary. Take what serves you from this and leave the rest. Trust your own experience, trust your own soul, it knows the way. And remember, you're not alone on this journey. We're all in it together, all trying to wake up, all trying to find our way home. So be gentle with yourself, be patient, and keep listening for that quiet voice that knows who you really are. It's been waiting for you all along.